In this video, I'm going to teach you factorization type 3 trinomial. So we are going to learn how to factorize a trinomial. The very first thing you must learn before you factorize a trinomial is the standard form. So the standard form, as you can see over here, has 3 terms. That's the very first thing you must know or notice. It must have 1, 2, 3 terms. That's why we call it a trinomial. Trinomial has 3 terms. Now these terms are very specific. You must have a term that has a x squared, and you must have a term that has a x, and you must have a term that doesn't have a x. Okay, so you have a variable squared, and you have a variable that is not squared, and you got no variable here. This is very specific here. We call this the first term, middle term, last term. Let's just write you some notes here. The very first thing you must understand, we have 3 terms. And you have the first term, and then you have the middle term, and then you have the last term. Very important here. All right, so a perfect example of a standard form would be like something like 2x squared minus x minus 11. So this is called a trinomial. Now we want to be able to factorize something like this. And the way we factorize it is that we will take the first term and work out its factors, take the last term and work out its factors. Those factors, what we would do is something like this. You say, well, the factors of 2x squared, and work them out. The factors of 11, work them out. Then we want to cross multiply them. So I'm going to take the factors of 2x squared. I'm going to put them in here. And I want to cross multiply with these factors, put them in there, right? After I cross multiply, I will get answers here. Okay, so I call these the answers. So these answers, that's where you start using the rule. Okay, the rule says that if the C value of yours, this last term, remember the C value is the last term, if it's positive, then the answers that you get there must have the same sign as the middle term, which is this one. So they are both going to be negative in our case. And you must understand that the answers will be adding to give you this middle term. They must add to give you this value that's there in the middle term. If the C value is negative, like it is now, then the bigger answer will have the same sign as the middle term. So if this was like 2 answers, so this will be minus, and the other one will be positive. And you must understand that your answers will subtract to give you the middle term. Right, let's look at some examples here. So the first one, we have x squared minus 11x plus 28. The very first thing I will do is work out the factors. So I'll say the factors of x squared. I'm going to get something like x times x. I know x times x gives me x squared. While the factors of 28 will be 1 and 28. So you check. 1 times 28 is 28. I know 2 times 14. 2 times 14 is going to be 28. 3 won't go into 28. So you just say 28 divided by 3. It won't give you a whole number. And you say 4. 4 does go into 28. It goes in 7 times. Check a 5. 5 doesn't go into 28. And a 6 doesn't. Now you're going to be checking a 7, but you already have a 7 here. That means you're done. So then you want to cross multiply these factors. Now, I need to choose from the factors of x squared, which I only have 1. So I just take x and x. Now I need to choose the factors of 28. And the factors of 28, I can choose 1 and 28. I can choose 2 and 14. I can choose 4 and 7. But I know that at the end of cross multiplying, I will get my answers, and I look at the C value now. The C value is positive, so I know that these answers must add to give me minus 11. Right, so there's no way a 1 and a 28 will add to give me 11. A 2 and a 14 will add to give me 11. But a 7 and a 4 will add to give me 11. Now I'll cross multiply. I say x times 7 is going to give us 7x. X times 4 is going to give us 4x. Now I evaluate again. I say the C value is positive. Both answers must have the minus sign. So I go minus, minus. And that's going to be minus 11x. Now that you have the middle term, you're just going to open your brackets like this and bring these signs inside there, like that. So the brackets, or when I factorize this, is going to be x minus 4 bracket x minus 7. Now let's try out this one. Number 2. The very first thing I'll say, this is not in standard form because we have the x squared being negative here. You don't want that negative. So let's factor out the negative first. To factor out the negative, you're going to be left with positive x squared minus 4x minus 12x. Right, so then now you take the factors of x squared, which is going to be x, and the factors of 12, which is going to be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and then say 3 and 4. Now what you want to do with them is you want to cross multiply them. So I'm going to put an x here, because those are the only factors you have. You must notice now that if x squared has only one factors, which is like x and x, then, picking out this middle term will be affected or heavily influenced by the factors of the last term. So in this case, I'll say, well, I know that my C value is negative, so my answers after cross multiplying, they will need to subtract to give you minus 4. A 1 and a 2 cannot subtract to give you minus 4. A 2 and a 6 can subtract to give you minus 4. So I put a 2 and a 6, then I cross multiply, I get 2x. Cross multiply, I get 6x. Now I evaluate the sign now. You're going to say, oh, well, the C value is negative. That means that the bigger answer here, which is minus, is 6, is going to be minus, while the other one is positive. Now this is subtract to give you minus 4x. Now you open your brackets like this. Say plus here, say minus there. So this, when you factorize it, you still have the negative outside, but when you factorize these, you're going to get two brackets, which is x plus 2 and x minus 6. All right, so let's keep practicing together. Remember, I'm naming this as like type 1, type 2, type 3. Before you even go to type 3, you must always check, can you do type 1? Which in this case you can. There's a common factor of 2. So we're going to take out a common factor of 2. And then we're going to have now x squared minus x minus 6. Now we have to factorize something like this. So when you factorize this, guys, you already now understand that you have a x and an x, and then you're going to have a minus 3 and a plus 2. You must be able to understand this now. Right, let's take out a common factor here as well. And the common factor is 6. And you're going to be left with a squared plus 4a minus 5. And when we factor out this one as well, I'm using a shortcut just because we have that this a, the first term doesn't have a number in front of it. It just has a 1. So only the 5 influences how my brackets are going to look like. So I'm going to say I have the factors of a like that, right? But if you don't understand the shortcut, just follow the long method. But I'll say only the a affects here. And then I know that the factors of 5 that will give me 4 are going to be 5 and 1. Now, because the C value or the last term is negative, we know the bigger answer must have the sign of the middle term. So I'm going to put a plus here, plus 5, and a minus 1. Right. Now, what happens when the first term doesn't have now like simple answers, okay? So what we'll do is simple values there. I have a 3. With the previous questions, we had only a 1. So I'm going to still do the long method. I'll say 3x squared. And I understand the factors of this. The way I'll find them is I check the factors of the number first. The factor of 3 is 1 and 3 only. The factors of x squared are going to be x and x. These are the only factors we have. Then the factors of 1 are obviously 1 and 1. Now you want to cross multiply them. X and the 3x comes from the 3x squared, 1 and 1 there. So you cross multiply, you get x, cross multiply, you get 3x. Now you evaluate the sign. You say, well, the sign is positive. That means that they must share the same sign as the middle term to give you 4x. And that's that. So you have your brackets now. You're going to say x plus 1, 3x plus 1 as well. So then for this question, I'm going to do something similar. I'll say 18x squared. I know the factors here of 18 are going to be 1 and 18, while the factors of x squared are x and x. The factors of 18 again might be 2 and 9, and while the factors of x squared are x and x. We can also get 3 and 6, while the factors of x is just x and x. So multiplying 3x with 6x is going to give you 18x squared. Those are the factors. 4 doesn't go into 18, neither does a 5, and we're back to 6 while we have a 6 here. So we're done. Factors of 1 is just 1 and 1. Now we need to cross multiply these in such a way that our answers, right? We look at the C value. Our answer is going to subtract to give us positive 3. So I'm going to choose from this side. I'll say, which ones can subtract to give us positive 3? It's going to be the bottom 2. So I'm going to say 3x here and a 6x here. And I have a 1 and a 1 cross multiply to give you 3x and 6x. Now you're going to evaluate the signs. You're going to say, well, since the last term is negative, the plus goes to the bigger one, which is here, and that goes to the minus to give you positive 3x. Now we have our brackets. So you're going to say 3x plus 1, and you're going to have 6x minus 1. Let's practice more questions together. Always check if you can take out a common factor. So this case, you can't take out a common factor. So we have to work out the factors of 4p squared, and again it's going to be 1p and 4p, 2p and 2p. Then now we need to work out the factors of 2q squared. So we say these are going to be 1q, and we also have 2q to give us that. So these are the only factors now. So in this situation, we know that we can only choose a q and a 2q from that side. Now I need to choose from this side such that my answers that I get, look at the C value, it's negative. So the answers that we get will subtract to give you positive 7. So if I choose the 1 and the 4, I'm going to say 1p and I'm going to have 4p. I can choose them this way. This is going to give us 4 and this is going to give us 2. There's no way they will subtract to give you 7. Let's try the other way around. If I say 4 here and I say 1 here, I'll multiply like this to give us 8. I'll multiply like this to give us 1. And those are going to give us, subtracting, they can give us 7. So that's how I'm going to choose them. I'm going to take 4p I'm going to take 1p, q, and 2q. So across multiply, I'm going to get 4 times 2, which is 8. P times q is just pq. 1 times 1 is 1. And p times q is just pq. Now say the last term is negative, so the bigger answer here will have the plus sign. So plus, minus. And we notice that these are going to give us positive 7pq, which is the last term. Take the signs inside here, plus, minus, open your brackets. Now you have your factors. So you're going to go 4p minus q, and then you have p plus 2q. Right, we can do a similar thing to this one. We'll say, well, the factors of x to the power of 4 are going to be x squared and x squared. There's no other factors that will give you this. Yeah, we can take x to the power of 3. That also gives you that, but look at the middle term. You have an x squared here, so most probably you just want the x squares. So I'm going to choose the x squares when I cross multiply. Now I'm going to choose the factors of 6. Okay, 6y to the power of 4. I'm going to choose them. I have 1y to the power of 2, and I have 6y to the power of 2. Remember, I want the y's to the power of 2 because I have them there in the middle term. I can choose 2y to the power of 2, and I can choose 3y to the power of 2. So now I evaluate further, say, well, the c value is positive. Okay, we can see that the c value is positive. So then my answers will add, and they must add to give me 5. So I'm going to take 2y squared, and I'm also going to take 3y squared. Now cross multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. X squared times y squared is x squared y squared. X squared times y squared, we get 2x squared y squared. Now we look at the c value. They must both have the same sign as the middle term, so I have a plus plus, and that's going to give us 5x squared y squared. So I have my brackets now. These are the brackets that we want to write down. So I'm going to write down x squared. I have x squared plus 2y squared. Okay, then I have x squared plus 3y squared. Right, so in this situation, none of these were able to factorize further, but in some cases you might have that your brackets factorize further. So for example, like number 8 here, if one of these brackets were probably negative, except that we have none of these numbers being square numbers. So you can't factorize further, and this is the end of the lesson.